Well, what is the politics of this? If England had lost, would that have changed the election?
But I just think it might have made the Tories' position even worse, actually, because... I mean, you won't be surprised now I didn't watch the match, but I'm thrilled they're through because it just makes people more cheerful.
Yeah. And of course, gives Rishi Sunak the opportunity to tweet...
Yeah.
It's not over.
Exactly.
Till it's over.
Exactly.
Actually, they played as if Rishi Sunak was the manager, didn't they, for most of the game, and then made a late change.
Oh, well, then, do you think, Kevin, that the Tories could pull something out of the bag?
No.
As a last gasp equaliser into extra time?
No, if we're going to carry on football, I think they're about 5 or 6-0 down at the moment.
Who is their Bellingham?
Who is the Bellingham?
Who is the Bellingham of the Conservative Party?
I don't think they've got one at all, have they? It'll be the last surviving Tory MP,
and
whoever he or she is.
What about Sir Keir Starmer tweeting "never in doubt"? I mean, you know, the Labour Party have got this issue, haven't they, in the last couple of days, to fight complacency.
Yeah.
And with Rishi Sunak saying it's not over until it's over, Keir Starmer saying never in doubt,
it's sarcastic.
Does seem to be a nod towards the polls all say we're going to win. He didn't appear on Laura Kuenssberg yesterday, despite the fact that the Prime Minister was there. Do you think he's running a risk?
No, I had a mate watching the game in a South Shields pub and all the way through on WhatsApp. It's terrible, this is awful, we're going to go out, and then you pull it at the end, you go, never in doubt. It's like, yeah, it's a kind of a joke, isn't it?
And, of course, there is some history here. I mean, the last time the England men won a big tournament...
1966.
Under...
Labour government.
Howard
Wilson, that's right.
So, you know...
Yeah, and then...
Has Rishi Sunak, by seeing the win last night, given Keir Starmer, you know, the opportunity to be a Labour Prime Minister with a Labour victory?
And didn't we then get knocked out in 1970 in the World Cup?
Just before.
And that damaged Howard Wilson.
Lost it for Labour.
In
the quarters. And bad trade figures. It lowered the...
2 jumbo jets.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I remember, in this country, the best football tournament was Euro 96. And fantastic. In fact, I went to some games with you.
You did. We were there, by the way, at the first time. The England-Scotland game was the first time that Football's Coming Home was sung at Wembley. And we have David Baddiel, the guy who wrote it, with Frank Skinner, on the show today. We were there. Karen and I were there together, actually.
And we also had tickets for the final where we hoped England would be. But we got knocked out in 96, and it was Germany and Czechoslovakia. And I remember you and I were singing, I'd rather drive a Skoda than a Porsche.
That is what we were singing.
Czechs. Czechoslovakia.
OK, can we just haul ourselves out of this football nostalgia?
I've got such a great story.
It better be.
Ready for this?
The
Labour conference.
Stay awake.
Labour conference, 96, before the election, Gordon Brown and Tony Blair find out on the night before Gordon Brown's speech, they both got the same ending to their speech, where he says, Labour's coming home.
Right.
And Tony Blair said, You've got to cut it.
Line. Yeah.
And Gordon said, I know, but my speech is first. And Tony Blair said, sorry, he said, I'm the leader, cut it. So Gordon had to cut Labour's coming home from his speech. He was furious.
That's a great story.
Hold the front page. Hold the front page.
Is that tumbleweed blowing behind you, is it?
Gosh, is that in your political memoir, Ed?
Yeah. People throwing themselves into their juices.
I always say that you are the most generous person to co-host with.
I know. Sorry, my generosity was rather stretched there.
I actually just noticed your dress and his tie are colour coordinated.
We are coordinated.
But the point I was going to make, Susanna, is
in some ways.
My story.
Yeah, about 3 years ago. I was just going to make the point that Euro 96 was a fantastic festival of football.
Was it?
Did really well. All went on the semis. And they got no poll bounce for the Conservatives. I think people are just clever enough to separate the two.
But it was a year before anyway.
Yes.
Let's talk then about what might happen on Thursday. Or, more importantly, what might happen on Friday. Because the Tories want an apocalypse warning, don't they, Andrew? They want you to think, if you vote Labour in, they're going to build all over the Green Belt and they're going to shove your taxes up. Is that cutting through, do you think?
I think I'm told the tax thing now is beginning to cut through a bit, and I think you've seen the poll leaders not change much at all, if anything.
Started 20 points behind, and they stayed 20
but Labour's share of the vote has actually gone down a bit, about 38, 39. It was about 43. Yeah, I think that's right, Ed.
That's true.
Yeah, but I think...
And so is the Conservatives.
But the Conservatives have got no bounce at all, but they've just got to keep banging on that message, because I think what they hope is it's the idea of a supermajority will spook people. And it also, the idea of a supermajority may mean some Labour people won't bother to go out and vote. Oh, well, it's in the bag.
That's the danger, isn't it, for the Labour Party, Kevin?
It is. People think it's in the bag and complacency comes in. And, of course, your Labour minds are inevitably turning to what happens on Friday, because unless the entire British polling industry is going to be destroyed and every canvass return of all the parties is just useless, and everything, all the conversations on doorsteps were wrong, and something massive happens over the next 3 years, there will be a change of government.
Yeah, sure.
The question is, how big will the Labour majority be? How heavily will the Tories be hit? Then there are questions, what happens with the SNP, the Greens, and, of course, whether Reform UK get their bridgehead of a couple of MPs, half a dozen MPs in Parliament, including Nigel Farage himself. I think that's really where it's at. But there'll be a new Prime Minister, there'll be a new sheriff in town on Friday.
And they know it. And Rishi Sunak knows it. And although he'll never say it, but they know it. There's not a single person now in Number 10 or Tory HQ who thinks they can win, or even a hung Parliament. It's all about minimising the scale of Labour's victory.
And so do the newspapers, don't they? I mean, we had The Economist last week endorsing Labour.
Yeah.
Sunday Times yesterday, and today the Financial Times. I mean, if you'd said 6 months ago the Financial Times and The Economist would both endorse Labour's economic strategy, I'm not sure you'd have thought that was going to happen.
Success has many parents, and if there's a bandwagon rolling, you see them wanting to jump on it. It's like, my friends, colleagues come rivals at the Sun. What do? They're nearer Reform than they are Labour. But the group in New York always like to back a winner. They don't create them. It's about backing them and seeing to somehow be, where your readers are, because their readers are going to vote.
Well, the Sun
in
has
quite
a
heavy
famous
numbers.
caption or catchphrase, "The Sun what won it," doesn't it?
In 92.
Yeah, because they did the last person to leave the country if Neil Kinnock wins, please switch the lights out. Yeah. So, but the Sun haven't come out for anybody yet.
No, because if you read it and you know the people who work on it, it's a Tory paper, quite clearly with Reform leanings, tendencies. But will they have to go? Will Murdoch in the US decide I've got to be seen to be back in the government so I can have some access, some leverage going down the line?
You mean backing Labour?
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's not making Labour win. Labour's going to win anyway. Yeah. They can do what they like.
Well, you say that the tax line is cutting through with the voters. It was interesting. On this programme on Friday, Darren Jones for Labour was asked very specifically about whether a Labour government would, beyond the tax rises they've already said they're going to introduce, would introduce other tax rises. And let's have a listen to what he said.
Looking down at the camera for us, it's quite clear there will be, read my lips, no further tax rises under Labour. Is that right?
We've made the commitment not to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT. All of our manifesto is fully funded and fully costed. There is no need to make changes to other taxes.
Right. Then we can hold them to that.
There's a lesson there, isn't there, which is if you are doing a television interview, whatever's happening on your phone, it's always really important to listen to the question before you answer it. Because I think there, it was pretty clear. He was reading his phone. He didn't listen to Rob's question, which was beyond the manifesto, beyond what you said. Is there any need for any more tax rises? And he essentially said no.
Yeah. There is no need to make changes to other taxes.
That will be preserved by Tory HQ.
In Aspic.
In Aspic, for sure.
Yeah,
it will come back to haunt them.
Framed on a wall.
Yeah, because when they raise capital gains tax, which they may well, I think they will.
Or,
I'd be amazed if they don't.
Reduce reliefs and allowances, which I think would be perfectly legitimate and the right thing to do.
That will come back
which
to haunt them.
effectively would mean a rise in capital gains tax.
Well, yeah, if I had my way, I'd abolish it and just merge it straight into income tax. I don't see why people making money from share deals or selling businesses should pay a lower rate of tax than somebody scrubbing a floor or driving a bus or a taxi. Anyway, but that's not what they're going to do, but I'm sure there will be some movement on that. Yeah. But the basic lesson for him as well, if you're on screen, do not look at your phone.
Don't look at your phone.
Don't look at your phone.
It was clear he wasn't listening to the question.
Down the line, which he was, you've got to treat as if you're in the studio. There's no way, you ask a question and you do that. It'd be rude.
And he's going to be Chief Secretary of the Treasury, a key job going through the books. And he'll be, and then that will definitely be an issue for them.
So
their budget.
We're going to talk to Jonathan Ashworth this morning from the Labour Party about taxes. What about house building, Kevin? Is the Labour Party going to take on the NIMBYs and build hundreds of thousands of new homes in people's backyards?
That was the plan in certain areas, because I think at the time most of those new houses would be in the southeast, and most of those constituencies would have been Conservative when they were thinking ahead. Now, if Labour's won those constituencies, you can see if a local newly elected Labour MP in a southeast
with a small majority
constituency all of a sudden has people up in arms, then that Labour MP is going to be less keen to have all those new houses. But look, you've got to build houses. And I understand the NIMBY impulse of not in my backyard. You've got an area, you like your area, you don't want it to change. I've had it in streets where I've lived and people have been building houses, in a gap over the road, and I lost sight of a tree. No need for a small violin, but outside my front window, I could no longer have the view I used to enjoy, and I just thought, I don't really like that, but I didn't object. But I can see if you're going to get 1,000 houses.
This is almost as interesting as my story about Tony Blair.
Actually, it's probably even less interesting than I realised.
Even less interesting than my story.
Sorry, Susanna, you deserve better than us doing
We'll be the judge of that, Eccles. I was interested in Kevin's view in the tree. What happened to the tree, by the way?
Oh, I think it went,
What kind of tree was it, Kevin?
A leafy one.
Yeah, it's a nice view.
Did you ever hug it?
No, I think those days have gone, haven't they? I don't drink as much now.
But on that, the point is, it's not just about the government where these houses are built. Local authorities have a huge say in it. They can reject the plans. And I see in the papers yesterday there's going to be a local authority-led review of the Greenbelt. Local authority-led review. It isn't as straightforward as them just getting into them saying, we're going to build more houses.
But isn't there a big point here, which is we've said throughout this campaign on lots of different things, Keir Starmer's not telling us what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He's not really going to get a mandate. He's playing it safe. The one thing where they do seem to be being quite risk-taking and where they will have a mandate is to say, let us build more homes and change planning and tell local authorities what to do. It is in the manifesto.
Yeah.
Do you think that will give them the power to do, let's be honest, both Labour and Conservative governments in the last 30 years have not been able to build the houses the country needs. Is that going to change this time?
Well, if they're genuine if they've won a majority they're going to get, they can do it. But they have to change the planning system because local authorities will resist it. So they have to change it. And that is also key to getting growth because they want to start building houses, creating jobs, creating growth. Planning is a really important part of this. But it won't be easy. And there'll be a big punch-up with local councils.
There's also a big issue about new power lines. As you have offshore wind, you're going to decarbonise the grid. So the idea is by 2030, I don't think this target will be hit. The Conservative government's target is 2035. You take out carbon from electricity production. It's about 40% non-carbon now, renewables, offshore wind, onshore wind. But if you have more offshore wind, and it is cheaper, and it's renewable and cleaner electricity, which is all good, but to bring it onshore and to get it to where you want, you've got to build pylons. You can put the cables underground, but it's hugely expensive and slower.
And ugly.
But they will go through areas. Now, parts of Essex are going to be affected. You had NIMBYs in Liz Truss, for instance, saying, yep, let's get more power, but I don't want any pylons anywhere near me. Now, if Labour hold those seats in the South East, that is going to be more difficult
to do. And the politics of this is interesting because in the old days, when you had coal-fired power station, I mean, where we live in Castleford, there's loads of power lines. There's power lines everywhere because they were coming from where the mines were, from the power stations, all out across the country. The difference is when you're talking about wind power or wave power, it's not coming from Castleford or Leeds or Manchester. It's coming from the North Sea across what are much more rural areas. So it's a different kind of political challenge to put those pylons in.
Because as somebody from Tyneside, we were used to mines and shipyards and factories and steel plants and pylons. We were producing the energy and the goods for the rest of the country.
It meant jobs, didn't it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in more rural areas who say, "Oh, I'm not having that." No. They want the benefits of it, but they don't want the production or the transmission.
And productivity and development means fewer trees, fewer green areas.
Well, no, you can plant a lot more trees. You can plant a lot more trees.
Well, you can have more trees. There's plenty of brownfield
you might take some down,
but the builders don't want to build on
them. You can replace those you take.
Did they replace your tree, though, Kevin?
Don't know if it was. It'll be a little sapling. I had a tree in the garden fell over in a storm. I planted something else.
Oh, God, this just gets more interesting, doesn't it?
Dear me.
Our editor
else?
Anything else? Pointing out that there are a number of former Prime Ministers campaigning at the moment, including Theresa May. We have a little clip of her on someone's doorbell. Here we go.
We can't answer the door right now, but if you'd like to leave a message, you can do it now.
My name is Theresa May, and I'm here supporting Luke Graham, the Conservative candidate for the general election on the 4th of July. As you're not in, I'll pop a leaflet through your door.
She's a hard worker, isn't she?
Good on her. And she'll be in the Lords in a few weeks' time.
I remember back in the 2017 general election, she was accused for not going out enough.
She didn't want to engage with voters because she was so bad at it. She was so wooden.
She was Prime Minister then, wasn't she?
Yes.
Which I can see it's a bit trickier to go knocking on doors.
But she didn't even... I mean, there were some public events she didn't even appear at.
No, she was terrible.
But you've got to say, I mean, she could have said thank you, hello, a bit more. She could have been a bit more pleasant, I think.
I think that was all right.
I think that was rather sweet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it would have persuaded anybody.
My name is Theresa May.
And also, there was a photograph. I don't know if we have this photograph. Oh, no, we don't. So you'll have to... that's a little tease. We have a photograph. I'm not going to tell you what the photograph...
A photograph of something.
Oh, of something.
Is it possibly Kevin's tree? Not saying that your cheese wasn't interesting, Susanna.
I might cry.
It might be.
It was a bit dull, but it wasn't that dull.
Yeah, we'll reveal what it was in just a couple of minutes. Tell you what, there was a photograph, wasn't there, of Putin appearing at Nigel Farage's rally. Well, not the rally. He did an address, I think it was in Essex. And the campaign group, led by donkeys, managed to infiltrate the venue.
So funny.
And this came down... It's actually rather interesting as it kind of rolls down and appears behind him on stage. What a terribly... I love Nigel. Who could it possibly be?
I know.
And then as it appears, there is a photograph
there was some
of
titters
the Russian president.
Yeah, there were some titters in the rally, the meeting from his supporters thinking it was good, and then they realised what it is. But he then turns round. He says, who put that there? And then he calls for the centre's management to be sacked.
He didn't see the funny side of it. He didn't see the funny side of it.
I think, that I thought was very funny, made a good political point, and is totally legitimate, unlike milkshakes. That's what we should do. But those lads trying to get it down.
And here is the photograph of another former Prime Minister lending his weight, to the Labour campaign. And he's giving Angela Rayner a hug.
I've got to say, he has changed in life, hasn't he?
He's much more touchy-feely now.
The Gordon Brown I knew, he would never hug anybody.
No.
Really?
Yeah. After I went on Strictly, the next time I saw him, I hugged him.
Because you've got all tactile.
I went all huggy. He was in trauma.
Was he?
I said to him, look, forgive it. I said, my father's got used to it, you can get used to it too.
Was he very much a cold handshake?
He would have...
He wasn't really a hugger back then.
He would have at some point. He'd have held his hand out and said, how do you do?
No, he said, thanks for all you do.
But the significance of that is Angela Rayner, back in '97, was working as a carer, had a child who was pregnant at school, didn't leave with any qualifications, and she hugely benefited from Sure Start children's centres and tax credits that Gordon Brown as Chancellor and that Labour government brought in.
But there was also...
The Labour government have not promised to reinstate.
Which is the subliminal message of that photo opportunity, which is Gordon Brown and Angela Rayner saying to the Labour leadership, to Keir Starmer, don't forget child poverty.
Because she will be a thorn in his side on that if he doesn't get if they don't change.
Which is her role.
That's particularly on child benefit, for instance.
All
cap
credits
on child benefit.
Yeah, two child benefit cap.
Yeah. It's pretty clear where she's coming from on this.
Yeah, because child poverty is up, was it 900,000? And many of them, I think it might even be more than half of them, are in households with a working parent. And it's just that low pay in the benefit system.
The other thing is that child poverty...
But
child poverty in families with 2 children or 1 child has gone slightly down since 2019. But child poverty in families with 3 or more children has been going up and up.
I bet you in the first budget they'll lift the cap.
I would be surprised.
You don't think so?
It's a lot of money.
I think before the next election they will.
All right, before the next election.
Which will either be through the proceeds of growth, higher borrowing, or raising a tax. That should be raised, like capital gains tax.
We have mentioned most of the party leaders. We haven't mentioned the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, yet, but apparently he was doing aqua aerobics at Cheltenham Lido.
I've got breaking news for you on that.
Right.
I have breaking news. I was in the street last Thursday, walking down outside the Home Office. I saw Ed Davey in the street, and I said to Ed, I said, what's going on with the bungee jump? And he said, yes, he said, it's on.
Just remind people why the bungee jump is significant.
Well, because he had done all these different stunts, and I said, it's all very well, you know, roller coasters and whatever, falling into the sea off, you know, a boat or whatever. Bungee jump. We challenged him on Good Morning Britain. He says he's up for it. His aides all went white and then said, I'm not sure that's in the plans. But he said, no, I want to do it. So I'm assuming between, what is it, 3 days till the polls open?
It is 3 days and 5 minutes.
3 days for Ed Davey to get in a bungee jump.
What would the insurance be on that?
Is he a man or a mouse? A man or a mouse?
Are you doing it with him?
No.
Oh.
That's what Ed thinks.
All right, I can just see Lib Dem vote goes off a cliff, Lib Dem vote drops.
But bounces
Lib Dem vote sinks.
Remember, the bungee jump is all about bouncing back.
Yeah, if it goes right.
Very Alan Partridge.
It's not deterred him so far.
Here is a list of all the candidates standing for the Perth and Kinrossshire constituency, which is where Theresa May was out campaigning on people's doorbells. Thank you very much indeed.
She was travelling a long way.
Yes,
Scotland.
all the way up to Scotland.
Maybe she hoped nobody would recognise her.
Stop, she's all right.
Love that.
You never used to say that.
Well, I'm glad she's not Prime Minister because she was hopeless.
If Theresa May did a bungee jump, now that would be something.
She's a decent woman.